TNCRadio.LIVE, your commercial driver navigation station.
Good afternoon. This is TNCRadio.LIVE, and this is the Truckers Network Radio Show with your host, Shelley Johnson.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate that. Yes, this is the Truckers Network Radio Show on TNCRadio.LIVE. We're all about the news, talk, information, and entertainment that drivers want to hear. You know, health and fitness are major concerns for drivers, so I decided to reach out to the trucker trainer. Bob Perry is owner of Health and Transportation. He's been featured on Red Eye and Landline Radio, as well as the New York Times, American Road Magazine, NPR, ABC Radio, and was a featured TV segment on ABC Nightline. Bob spent nearly 40 years educating drivers and sharing life-changing products and services to help them live healthier lives on the road. Welcome, Bob. I'm so glad you could be on the show today.
Gosh, thank you for having me, Shelley. I'm always able, willing, and ready to share information to help our drivers stay safe and get home.
And they really appreciate that. For those who haven't heard about you, could you maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do for drivers?
Yeah, thank you. So I come from a family of professional drivers. I have actually, three brothers that have the ability to drive, and actually our youngest sister drove truck in the military. So I come from a family of professional drivers, and I drove when I was young, early on, long enough to realize that was not for me. I didn't have the skill set, which allowed me to have a great appreciation for these men and women, the job that they do out there every day.
What did you drive?
Drove tractor-trailer dump.
Okay.
Dump truck back in the day. And my brothers now haul various different types of products and so forth. But, we grew up in it, right? We were around all of our lives. And so when I realized I was not going to be a driver, which I think my father was probably just as relieved as I was. But he said, so now we know what you don't want to do. Now we got to find what you got to do. So, because you got to have a job. So I spent my life career in the health and wellness and healthcare arena. But what I loved about, I could take back what I learned and really work with people that I grew up with and understand, really their daily challenges out there and help them make small little changes that allows them to, live as healthy as they possibly can, pass their DOT exam to get home safe to see the family. So I had a company for many years called Rolling Strong, and I sold that 4 years ago. And I realized after I did that I really wasn't done yet. So I am very fortunate now to be working with a company called Aspire, ESPYR. Mm-hmm. They are the leader in the mental health coaching arena. Yes. And it was a perfect combination. So now we're able to help drivers both physically and mentally when they're out there, especially today, right, Shelley, the world. I mean, they're so isolated out there and so much going on and so many things on their minds. And, our program allows them to pick up a phone 24/7 and talk to a licensed clinician and just say what they need to say. And hopefully we can help them mitigate making any kind of a bad decision, right? And as much as just, what, I'm done, I'm quitting today, and help them not to go down that path. So very fortunate to be able to be working with Aspire.
Well, this is excellent. And you certainly have gotten national acclaim. You've been on some high-powered shows on network and everything, so you made quite a name for yourself. Well,
thank you very kindly. My wife tells me, you stick around long enough, right? People come back around. So that's, been very blessed and fortunate that I've made a lot of good relationships, both, in the transportation space and, media space, and never changing the message. It's always about the driver. If we can help enough of them get what they want, then, we'll get what we want. And helping them keep their license and maintain their livelihood and getting home safe.
What exactly do you do for drivers? What do you cover?
Yeah, so we have a program called Fit to Pass, and you may be aware, of course, most everybody is in transportation. You know, there's a huge driver shortage going on, right?
Oh, sure.
And which it has been for many, many years. And the traditional model is recruit, bring them in, and they leave and just basically churn and burn them. And one of the statistics that a lot of people are not familiar with is that, you know, we lose thousands and thousands of drivers every month because they can't maintain their DOT recertification. Example, you know, their blood pressure levels too high, their sugar levels, could be sleep deprivation, number of things.
Their BMI and all of that, they're looking at all those things.
Yeah. And so, and, you know, when they go to school, they don't teach them that. They teach them how to go forwards and backwards and all that fun stuff, but never teach them how to live on the road, right? And if you've been out there and you're in this space, you know it's very difficult, especially what's going on tonight, right? A lot of restaurants are closed. Even the
it's terrible.
Don't want crowds.
Yeah. And it's hard for drivers to get a good meal.
Exactly. And so, you know, and people that get involved in fitness, they'll tell you can never, you know, you can never outrun, you know, eating properly. And, you know, the working out is just really what it helps do to, you know, keep your body strong. But really where all the difference is made is what you put in your mouth. And so our program called Fit to Pass, companies contract with us, and developed a methodology many years ago. And what we do basically is we have what's called CDL wellness coaches. These are coaches that have years of experience of working with professional drivers and understanding their lifestyle and what kind of changes they need to make and what easy changes they can make to help them, you know, see a significant change internally. You know, one of the things that I came back into the space many years ago is that working with, as I refer to, the residential sector, if all, you know, people in those spaces like gyms and so forth, that they don't look like everybody in the magazine in 30 days they're done, right? They don't want to do it anymore.
Sure. It's very misleading. Yeah.
Yeah. But professional drivers, what's so unique about them is you get them to lose 10 pounds and all of a sudden they see their heart rate drop, their blood pressure goes down a little bit, things start to change and they go, wow, if I do this for another 30 days, and then I'll be in good shape when I go in for my recertification. So that's what we do. Is we help them get to that space so that we want them, that when they go in for that recertification, to have the best opportunity to pass that they can. And then, you know, and again, a lot of people are not familiar with the national statistics, but, you know, when they first put the National Registry Board into effect, where, you know, you had to take a higher level of certification to give a DOT exam. Mm-hmm. And the last numbers that came out of there, they had done something like 14 million DOTs. And out of that 14 million, Shelley, almost a little over 6 million of those had 1-year cards. And almost 1,980,000, I think the number is, had 3-month cards. So, and when you have a 1-year card, you've already been diagnosed that you've got high blood pressure, sugar issues, sleep deprivation. And unless you make significant changes, it's hard to go back to a 2-year card. And if you have a 90-day card and you go back and you don't make changes, you're on the bench. You can't work for a year.
For those who aren't familiar, what's actually involved in the certification process?
A lot of it is, you know, they have eye exams and, you know, they do some muscular testing, your blood pressure. You have to take, you know, blood work to do your urine work as well, and, you know, check your sugar levels and hearing, and, you know, but a lot of cases just really not enough to really help really get down the details. And but what I mean by that is they basically say, hey, you know, Bob, you know, your blood pressure is too high and your sugar level is too high. I want to give you 1-year card. You got 1 year to fix it. And the driver says, okay, what do I do? Well, that's not the business they're in. And they're like, next.
Sure. Yeah. Go away and go fix that. I mean,
yeah, because
so counterproductive.
In reality, they want them to come back and give another and come back, right? And in the 90-day, and that's one of the hardest things too, Shelley, is getting companies engaged, because they're looking at, well, hey, Bob, this is his responsibility. He's supposed to take care of that. I can't help it. But yet they need drivers. But why would you not want to spend, like our services, depending on how many drivers in your fleet, It's less than $100 a year to help take care of that driver. And when you replace that driver, it's like $8,000.
Well, it should be a no-brainer then, huh?
Right. But, the problem is that the traditional thinking is that truck drivers really don't care. It's not in their DNA. I'm not going to spend money on Bob when, he may end up just leaving anyway or not taking advantage of it and leaving. So it's been a challenge for many, many years. I mean, I've been doing this, this particular niche since like in 2008. And, we see an increase. There's more companies out there, trying to be involved. But it's still a real challenge. And then when the pandemic hit, it got even more difficult, right?
Absolutely.
All the events shut down and hard to reach drivers, and drivers couldn't get home. And that's when we really developed this whole plan of, being able to offer what we call Talk Now, where a driver can pick up the phone and talk to a counselor, a clinician to, help them, work through some troubles. And of course, Fit to Pass, they talk to coaches, and we provide them weekly tips and information on how to make smarter choices out there on the road.
We'll be covering more of that here on TNCRadio.LIVE. Definitely stay tuned with Bob Perry. This is the Truckers Network radio show on TNCRadio.LIVE. I'm Shelley Johnson with Tom Kelly. Today we're talking with Bob Perry, the trucker trainer, and he's owner of Health and Transportation. You've got some wonderful information here, Bob. Before we went to break, you were talking about the certification process and how it's gotten more stringent. You gave me a fact that really kind of shocks me. Nearly 50% of drivers out there have a high chance of failing it. Could you talk more about that? How the standards have changed, and what do drivers need to know today so they can pass it?
So, thank you, Shelley. So, if you look at the overall market, almost 50% of the drivers out there, 45 to 50%, have short-term cards, and so back in the day, there was, you had to be a DOT doc to be certified, but there was also a lot of not factual information. Unfortunately, a lot of drivers got cards that maybe shouldn't have gotten cards and needed help. And so now when they did the National Registry, that means that you have to be in this new National Registry, that they've taken a higher standard of exam and more follow-up to find out, and different types of random testing, hair testing, those type of things. But the problem is that when they do that and the driver receives a short-term card, there's no mechanism to help those men and women make a change in how they do it, right? Because it's not in their DNA. They don't know how. And so that's what we do, that's what I start focusing on, is that pool of drivers who have short-term cards that we can help make significant small changes and help them go in and pass and keep their 1-year card or go from a 1-year to a 2-year. And we've helped a lot of drivers that have 90-day cards, because like I was saying, if you lose a 90-day card, you're off the team. I mean, you're on the bench, and typically statistics show that once they lose that, they go out and they find something else to do that may not make the money, but they find another employment. And then, it just all starts piling up on top of each other. You just can't make the change. And then, like I was explaining to you as well, just imagine you as a consumer, not a driver, and you went to see your doctor, and your doctor said, Shelley, I'm going to give you 90 days and you come back and see me. I need some significant changes. And so that's a pretty daunting task, right?
Oh, yeah.
For individuals. And then you imagine a truck driver out there on the road working away from home, no access. And that's what I always mean about drivers. You and I have accessibility to make changes. Many of the drivers don't. And they're trying to feed their family, and they got to keep their job, and they got the pressure of it. And they just continue to eat their emotions and make bad food choices. And they go back, and we lose a lot of them, but I really, we find that if we have 90 days to work with a driver, typically 70% of the time, we can get those drivers in a position but now that has to work both ways, right, Shelley? I mean, you have to be willing to cooperate.
Sure.
And work with the coach and make those changes. It isn't automatic. That's one of the things people ask me all the time about all these different programs. Bob, does this work? Is this the best? What's the best? I said, listen, just about anything works, but you have to apply the work to make it work.
It's hard to break a habit. I've heard it takes at least 6 weeks, and you have to be convinced and want to try. Certainly bad eating habits, those have got to be hard to break and to try to make a drastic change in 90 days. How do you walk a driver through that?
One of the first things that we implement when we start working with drivers is that, once again, you have to make the connection, to the driver, because drivers are very industrial thinking, right? I mean, most of them are mechanically inclined, and they get that. And so when you can make the connection, you talk about pre-trip safety check. They all know what that is. I mean, that is ingrained in you as a driver when you're being trained in safety checks. Anytime you stop, you do not pull that truck back out on the road until you walk around at least one time, look to see if there's anything strange going on, something hanging down, lights out, or whatever. Mm-hmm. So we tried our best to really ingrain in them when they stop is to do a pre-trip fridge check. Meaning before you get back in your truck, look and see what you have in your refrigerator, your cooler, whatever, right, that's accessible. Because the life of a professional driver, you're going to get stuck out there on the road. Point being, like we were talking about, the horrific snowstorm, right, that hit in Texas. Yeah. And then, traffic jams. I mean, anytime there's construction breakdowns, whatever, right? And when you're sitting there and your wheels aren't turning, then if you don't have a good choice to reach for, you're going to make a bad choice. And you're going to be, pounding maybe power drinks, smoking too much, drinking a, soda or whatever, and not having water, some healthy nuts, pop, something to snack on, right? And then what happens is after sitting there for an hour or two, whatever it is, and you get rolling, you may be amped up, but the problem is what's going to happen in 35, 45 minutes, right? You're going to start coming back down and you're going to reach for another one. And before you know it, you're on this cycle. And eventually by the end of the day, you're going to crash and you're not going to be motivated to get out and walk, make any kind of change. So that's one of the first steps we do to really help them make changes.
Do you put them on an exercise program? I would imagine all of it's customized.
Yeah, it depends on what you really need to accomplish. And we try to find out. And one of the things I've always been a big believer in, it's not the exercise you should do, the one you will do, right? And we got to find that out.
Sure. Yep.
What you feel good about doing. I'm not going to try to make you force you to do something you don't like to do. And so, and it's really as simple as, walking is really, the easiest and most cost-effective things that drivers can do. But we teach them to walk with intention. And, if you're got 10 minutes, that's all you really need if you put your phone away, or unless you want to use your phone to listen to music or whatever. But you got to keep your shoulders back, you got to keep your abdominal muscles tight, and you got to walk with intentions. And that means you could walk at a relatively decent speed, say for 30 seconds, and then slow back down for 30, and then back up for 30. So kind of interval type. And get 10 minutes in, you'd be surprised if you do that 3 or 4 times a day. You can burn some decent calories. And then if you're watching what you're putting in your mouth, you can really see results. Because over the years, the numbers have taught me that the average drivers out there, it's not unusual for them who are not trying to watch what they're eating or drinking, consume as much as 4,000 to 4,500 calories a day.
Wow.
And a lot of those are consumed by liquids.
Okay.
So getting the driver to cut out 3,000, 4,000 in a week is not very difficult, making small changes, right? So then all of a sudden, they can drop a pound here and a pound there. And 10 pounds is our benchmark. If I can get a driver to 10 pounds loss, they're going to see a positive change in their readings.
What are some of the percentages you've seen in terms of improvements that when a driver comes to you and says, I need to make changes in the next 90 days, I have no clue how to do this. What kind of results have you seen?
Well, surprisingly enough, very high results, because once again, our drivers are so nutritionally deprived. I used to joke all the time, but I said, I could give probably a driver a Flintstone vitamin and they'd see some benefits right away, because they just don't get the nutrition. So we see a pretty high return. Typically when we launch with a company, Shelley, and a company gets engaged, depending on, the driver pool, it's usually a third, and a third, usually a third of the drivers right away. So let's say you got 100 drivers, usually, 30 of those drivers will jump in right away and, Bob, I've been thinking about this. I need to do something. I've heard you on the radio. I've read your stuff. Okay, I'm in. They get involved. And then the next third are the people who start to see the stories, right? Because one of the things we do, we work very hard the first 30 days to get us a poster kid child. someone that's, seeing the benefit of it. And then that starts to spread through the driver pool, and it spreads, and then you get that other third. And then you get that other third out there. They're like, you know what, Bob, I've been doing this. I'm not going to make a change, and we'd always say, listen, that's fine. But if you ever, need to make a change, because typically what happens is it always is. I always try to find out the common thread, and it's always the same. Drivers come in, get involved, make a change because of the family.
Right.
Home, the granddaughter or the daughter said, Dad, are you going to be here to walk me down the aisle? The grandchild said, Dad, can't you get up and Granddad and go play football? I mean, it's always family related, and they don't want to see those people let down. So that's why they want to suddenly make a change and get involved. So, and if we can get 10 drivers, for example, involved, and 10 involved, then we'll see, 50 to 60% positive ratio of change if they're following the program.
So let me go back to something you said at the beginning and kind of put these two things together. You were talking about the driver shortage, which, some people say, oh, there's no driver, but I think there is.
Right.
But don't we also have a problem of experienced drivers? Because, quite frankly, and I'm that age group, it's the 45 plus guys who are getting themselves in trouble and waking up one day going, where'd that big basketball come from? And so we're losing a lot of experienced drivers because of health issues, and I think that's a dangerous thing.
Very good. I'm glad you brought that up, and that's exactly what I talk to companies about. If you look at those drivers that have those problems, and when they started with you, how long they've been driving with you, did they have a 2-year card, and when to start to change it? Listen, when you do this job, as we talked about, it's unfortunately blood pressure, sugar, sleep deprivation. It's an inherence of the profession, right? It comes with it. And
need a better driving job? Go to TNCRadio.LIVE/driverinfo.
This is the Truckers Network radio show on TNCRadio.LIVE. I'm Shelley Johnson with Tom Kelly. We're chatting with Bob Perry, the trucker trainer who's with Health and Transportation. Bob, before we ran out of time, you were talking about how we're losing really good drivers just because they can't manage their health. Did you want to pick up where you left off? What are the biggest struggles that can leave a driver out of a job?
Well, the biggest struggle is them not being prepared to go in do their DOT exam. And one thing we were talking about earlier as well is that these drivers we lose typically, they all have good driving records. And it's important that we try to save those. That's one of the messages that we give out. We want to save skilled drivers, right? So it's important that, like one of the things that's happened now is that when all the pandemic hit, right, a lot of the state agencies were closed down, licensed and, clinics to go in and get an exam. So the government gave a deferment, meaning that if you had a CDL due or whatever and you couldn't get in, it was fine. You would not be penalized for driving with not having your CDL recert and so forth. And so they did it for 90 days and, still didn't change. Another 90 days, So now it's coming up, it's time to, pay the bank basically. And now in April, what we're going to see is this big influx of drivers trying to go in and get their research done that took advantage of the deferment. Now, a lot of companies didn't choose not to do that so they wouldn't be stuck in this jam. And I praise them because they were very active about getting their drivers in, finding someplace somehow to get their exams. But for those who took advantage of it, now you're going to be in and you haven't really been paying attention to it. And you're thinking in the back of your mind, okay, so now all of a sudden you got to start thinking about now. You got to start making some changes right now. And that's why when you called, it was appropriate time. And the same thing I've been doing a lot of my other networks that allow me to come on and talk about it, encouraging drivers, listen, I don't know what the right thing is for you to do. Just like I tell fleets, I don't know what the right thing for you to do, but I do know the wrong thing is to do nothing at all. And, just like I tell drivers also, you don't drive your rig down the road at night with your lights out. You got to manage your health the same way. You got to get in front of it. And
absolutely.
Take a peek under your own personal hood and see what's going on, and so that you can be confident when you go in for this research.
And the tendency is to put it off, not do it when you dread it, the unknown. Is there some sort of a guideline that you have people follow? What makes your program unique? Maybe you could hit some of the high points here.
Yeah, what makes it unique is that, one, we have years and years of experience. Fit to Pass is, we have CDL coaches that are experienced working with them. We understand, more importantly, the methodology. All of our messages are all driver-centric. We know how to get drivers engaged, how to get them involved. I don't know if you spend much time on social media, and I think now we're connected on it. You can see one of the things that I started last fall, I guess it was, when first we learned about the shows shutting down, right? When MATS closed down, there's no live events, no way to stay relevant and really present in front of our customers and drivers. We started these virtual fitness competitions and had no idea, how it was going to go. And so we launched them virtually, trying to find the fittest female and male driver. And we had hundreds of drivers sign up for this contest. I've been very fortunate to have a lot of great support behind us with Michelin tires, Alcoa wheels, TransFlow, Fahrenheit batteries, Sleep Charge, all these. And of course, without the help of Aspire, the parent company, it wouldn't have happened. But when these drivers got involved and we challenged them to do push-ups, and they did, and they would post their clips up. And anyway, it went on for 6 weeks, and then it got down to last week, and it was whoever did the most in one set, right? And the driver who won it, did 125 in one set. The lady driver that won did 47. So that was such a big hit. We came right back. We just finished step one doing squats. And just had a great turnout again. And it showed that drivers really do want to do something and be active if you give them an opportunity to do it. And Michelin and Alcoa, they gave away, like this last contest, the winners won a free set of steering axle tires and Alcoa wheels for the front. Wow. This next contest, they can win a set of drive axle tires, which is 8 tires and 4 wheels. I mean, it's just huge winnings. But
oh, yeah.
So that's how we do these, and we show we can get drivers engaged. So that's what makes us unique. We understand it. And, we, like I said, our message is it's all about the driver. It's all about them. We try to make it easy. It's affordable, and be able to make it safe and give them certain little points that they can take advantage of. And probably more than anything, we're very relentless. I mean, we don't give up. We continue to fight the fight to help these drivers.
So because you make your program driver-centric, I would imagine that the drivers don't feel like you're nagging them, because that obviously is, they've heard, okay, yeah, I know I need to do this. Yeah, right. They've come to you and you understand them. That's got to be huge.
It is, and especially when they know that, listen, I learned this early on. When I went in and I'd give these presentations, the drivers were all sitting there, right, and they got their arms folded, these big, burly guys sitting there, and they're thinking, okay, why are they bringing this guy in? And they really care about how we, take care of ourselves. And then we start explaining to them, and they understand. I mean, I come from this life, and I understand it. And I know when our father retired, he retired, as I say, with the professional truck driver healthcare package. He had blood pressure, he had sugar issues, and he had sleep deprivation. So, we want to do all we can to help as many drivers as possible retire healthy so that they can have some quality of life.
Are some of the drivers that come to you rather surprised at what they need to improve upon?
No, I mean, listen, drivers, that's one of the things also too, that they're very in tune. They realize that there's a value proposition for them to maintain their license, and they know that that's one of the things they have to do. And they realize there's an underlying incentive there, but I've done this from the beginning. I don't beat them up with that. I don't use that as a carrot. Hey, listen, Bob, you got 90 days, man. If you don't get this, you're going to be out. I don't use that as a carrot. Like I said, it's all about them, taking care of them, taking care of their livelihood, and getting them home. And if you do these things, and by the way, if you have a recert coming up, this is going to help you. So I don't use that as a carrot to beat them up with.
Well, I was just wondering if some of the drivers are actually surprised that their blood pressure's up. They didn't know this. I mean, because obviously they call that the silent killer. People don't know. Do some of the drivers come to you after having had an exam and they're like, "Oh, I had no idea"?
Yeah, very good point. We hope to get back to that time of doing it, but now you can't because you can't go on site. But to your point, you don't have to weigh 300 pounds to have high blood pressure or high sugar. Mm-hmm. I can tell you the number of drivers that weighed 150, 160 pounds and took their sugar and it was over 300. They had no idea. The same way with blood pressure. And so, yes, there is a certain amount of those drivers that don't realize that. They can't listen, I'm slim, I'm lean and mean, I don't, but all of a sudden, they come in and do an exam and they've got high blood pressure or sleep issues or, both. And I mean, it happens. You don't have to weigh 300 pounds. So yeah, they're relatively surprised and they're like, well, how did this happen? Right. And it's a lot of times, most for them, it could be generic, but also too, it's their eating habits. They burn a lot of calories, but they're intaking a lot of sugar and a lot of those issues. But, there's been many times when we've done these screenings and some drivers have had to go to the hospital right away.
Wow. So those screenings are important.
They are.
Somebody knows it or not. And especially when you have a high risk lifestyle, it's a stress on the body. Well,
it's like one of the things I use all the time. I encourage them, once again, trying to make the correlation between them and their truck. And, you got to take a peek under your own personal hood, and so many times, we're all guilty of it to a certain extent. We care more about other people or more about our animals than we do ourselves, right? A truck driver wouldn't drive his truck, over the miles and not change the oil. You're the same way. Your body's the same way. One of the things I ask drivers all the time when I'm doing clinics and classes, ask them to raise their hand. How many have pets at home? And they raise their hand and say, how many of those do you think those pets got fed first thing in the morning? They all did. What would you do if I showed up at your door and gave your pet a cigarette, a cup of coffee, and a donut? Right?
That's a good point.
You wouldn't let it happen. So if you do that to your pet, why do you do it yourself? So, it just makes them think one step further.
And that's so absolutely essential. And I think if you couch it the right way, people can grab onto that and go, yeah, that makes sense. And they're going to be a lot more accepting of making the changes that they need to in life. Bob, I want to definitely talk to you about more of your insight and what your program actually offers here on the Truckers Network radio show. We're talking with Bob Perry. He's the trucker trainer on TNCRadio.LIVE. Definitely stay tuned. He's got some great information. This is the Truckers Network radio show on TNCRadio.LIVE. I'm Shelley Johnson with Tom Kelly. Today we're talking with Bob Perry, the trucker trainer. Bob, you mentioned Fit to Pass, which that's actually the brand that people should know. Could you give us more details about what that's all about and how it works to help the drivers?
Yeah, thank you, Shelley. So, Fit to Pass, just what it says. We work hard to make sure you are fit to pass your DOT exam. Everybody knows that, in the transportation space that you've got regular recertifications you have to do depending on what length of card you have. So what we do is that we assign you a coach. A company first comes to us and contracts us for our services, and they cover the benefit for the driver. And so we reach out to the drivers right away, let them know about this great benefit that they have. They can download our app, and when they download their app, that's how we can communicate with them. They can find out a lot about information, and also they can take an assessment, and we've got all kinds of nutritional components in there, workout programs that they can follow. We send them updates, every week, tips and so forth. And then they have a session with a coach. Everything's done telephonically right now instead of in person, but they can talk to a coach, and these are CDL coaches, and they can find out what their goals are and what they're trying to accomplish. And we can tailor a program to them and make sure we're sending them information that's relevant to what they're trying to overcome. Obviously, if they're trying to fight, high blood pressure, we're not going to send them information about sleep deprivation if that's not what they're trying to accomplish. And so we try to make sure we understand what they're trying to overcome, and just give them small little tips, spoon feed them. We always say all the time, it's small steps equal big results, right?
I was going to say that baby steps. Yep, absolutely.
And because it's overwhelming. And I'm telling you, we've had, when I say hundreds, I mean that, hundreds of drivers who have lost 100 pounds. And once again, if you think about that, anybody to lose 100 pounds is a huge accomplishment. But then you become a driver and you're on the road and you be able to do that. It's pretty wild. And it's a great accomplishment. But then more importantly is that not everybody needs to do that. And everybody needs, just like we were talking earlier on the break, you don't have to weigh 300 pounds to have high blood pressure or high sugar readings, so everybody needs to be aware of it. That's why we promote all the time for drivers to take a peek under their own personal hood and see what's going on, right? So that they have a great understanding about their own personal health and where they're at. Because we want you going back in and feel confident. So that's what really Fit to Pass is really about. It's a year-long coaching program, but we really hone in 90 days before you take your research so we can make sure, Shelley, the drivers are in the best position to pass their DOT.
Now, is this something companies will pick up, or is it up to the driver? How does all of that work?
Yeah, so the companies contract with us, and they pay to put the drivers in the program. We find the best way to do this is that if it's company sponsored, because what that does, it sends a real message to the driver that my company cares about me, right? Mm-hmm. And especially a lot of the companies that we work with, they could have maybe 300 or 400 drivers. And when you have a small fleet like that, not that that's small necessarily, but it's small relative to when there's a company that's got 1,000 or 2,000 drivers. Those drivers there are typically known by name and not a number. And so they're like family. And also, too, economically, you have that, 200 trucks and you've got 5 of them sitting in the yard, that's a big hit. You're making payments and it's not producing you any revenue. Right. So, and drivers are at a premium today. And so this also should be a recruiting benefit when they're recruiting drivers to come. And here's another reason why you should come to ABC Freight. We're going to assign you your own personal fitness coach. Ooh, you have a coach that can work with you. That's a huge benefit, right? Yeah, to know that, to live healthy on the road. So those are some of the key messages that we're trying to get out, and also the ability to talk to a licensed clinician if you're feeling lonely, stressed, something going on, in your life, and you need to talk to somebody that's, and we don't, what we're already trying to do right there is just help mitigate you making a bad decision and get you to think about it.
Sure.
So they could actually reach out when they're feeling low or frustrated. That's excellent. That's really essential.
So if I'm a driver out there right now, my company isn't doing this, what's a good way for me to encourage the right people to check you out? Do you have
first thing is to have them go to fittopass.com.
Okay.
And they can read about it. Then at that point, they can download like one of some of our free information, and then we can reach out to them and give them a plan, a roadmap that they to follow, and a proposal. If they'd like to engage in that, then we can get started. And we even do pilot programs because we're very assured of ourselves that we can prove we can move the needle and make a difference. And if you think about it. The size of your pool, it doesn't, take that much, and to save, 1 or 2 drivers, and the program's paid for itself.
Absolutely.
You're talking about spending $7,000-$8,000 to replace one driver, and you think how many drivers they do that every month. I don't know how familiar you are with that process, but there are companies that bring in, 30, 40 drivers every week because they're losing them, hoping that they're going to get 4 or 5 to stay. Hoping
that's expensive. Yeah. What's the website again, Bob, on how people can reach you? FitToPass.com. And also, too, we're talking about the contest. You do not have to be a member of it. You can join these contests. It's free. They're free. We start enrollment, sign up for our next contest next Monday. And the first 200 that sign up, you can get one of these really cool gator masks that you can have free just for signing up. But the prizes that you can win for this next contest are just crazy insane. If you're an owner-operator, you don't want to miss this opportunity because if you're the winner, you could win a set of drive axle tires by Michelin and Alcoa wheels by Alcoa. Free. Wow. If you're the winner. And then second prize, like $500 gift certificates
You can also, third prize, you can get a 30-day supply of CDL meals, which are meals designed for drivers living on the road, low sodium, low glycemic, all natural, all organic. They can easily heat up. So a lot of great prizes that they can really take advantage of.
That's excellent. Thank you so much, Bob, for being with us. We've been talking with Bob Perry, the trucker trainer. Definitely check out his program, Fit to Pass. You're listening to TNCRadio.LIVE, and this has been the Truckers Network radio show. Stay tuned for the Evening Surge coming up.
TNCRadio.LIVE, your commercial driver navigation station.
Hi, this is Tom Kelly, managing partner of IMSICO LLC, doing business as TNCRadio.LIVE. The website TNCRadio.LIVE and any content or podcast related to the website are copyrights of IMSICO LLC, copyright 2021. All rights reserved. Any redistribution or reproduction of all or any part of the contents in any form is prohibited other than the following. We welcome you to download and play the publicly available podcast and share with others for personal use. Please acknowledge TNCRadio.LIVE as the source of the material. You may not, except with our express written permission, distribute or commercially exploit the content. And while we endeavor to keep the information up to date and correct, we make no representations or warranties of any kind expressed or implied about the completeness, accuracy, reliability, suitability, or availability with respect to the website, the podcast, or the information, products, services, or related graphics contained on the website or podcast for any purpose. Any reliance you place on such information is therefore strictly at your own risk. For additional information, including details regarding monetization of this podcast, send email to podcasts@tncradio.live.